welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome. My name is Maddie and today I'll be sharing my wrap up for January. So in January I read 5 books. That's a little less than what I have been reading each month, but even though I only read 5 books this month, I'm still happy if I can read at least 1 book a month. So I'm still happy with that number. It's just not comparable to the 9+ books I've been reading each month. And I think the reason why that is because since I have moved into an RV, which I've mentioned in the past few videos, and I'm sharing it with my mom and my stepdad, which is not a problem at all. But the problem comes during my reading sessions. I tend to get distracted really easily by everyone around me. And so I think that's why my reading has really faltered this month, is because I've been exposed to too many distractions. With being around my parents all the time more than I was used to. When in our old house I just could seclude myself in my room, so it's a little harder to read now, and I think that's why I haven't read as much this month. But like I said, at least I still read 5 books. That's still an accomplishment. 5 books is still a lot, to me at least. And 3 out of the 5 books I read this month are all part of a series, so in actuality I'll only be talking about 1 series and 2 other books I read this month. So based on that, I'm not sure if this wrap-up is going to be as long as my other wrap-ups have been, but it'll just depend on how much I ramble, so we'll see about that. And quality-wise, I read really good books. Nothing was below a 3-star. Most everything was 4 stars, so I read a lot of great books in terms of quality, so I was happy about that. But anyway, why don't we just get into the books that I read in January. I quickly grabbed this book. I almost forgot about it. This was a part of my December wrap-up, but I finished this book after concluding filming my December wrap-up, so I couldn't include it in there, so I'm just going to give my thoughts on it here, and that is The Fire Between High and Low by Brittany C. Cherry, which is the 2nd book in the 𝑚𝑒 series. So going into the summary for this one, it is about Alyssa, and she falls in love with a troubled boy named Logan. And Logan has always believed he is not good enough for her since he is very poor and he's into things like drugs and all that, and Alyssa is a good girl and comes from a rich family, so he always felt like he just is not good enough for her. And something eventually happens to where Logan has to leave her, and he ends up leaving town. A few years pass and he does come back to town since he has family there, and he runs into Alyssa again and they kind of rekindle their relationship. I really enjoyed the first book in this series. I thought it was really dramatic and I'm all for the drama, and this book was dramatic as well. It is so angsty. So angsty, which I love angst, so that didn't bother me at all. Logan was really easy to fall for. This poor boy, he could not catch a break. Every single bad thing you can imagine happening to someone happened to him, and I always felt continuously so bad for him. I just wanted at least one good thing to happen to him, but he was always faced with so many obstacles, so many just really bad things would happen to him, and I really felt for him because of that. The romance in this one is really pure. I love the relationship that Alyssa has with Logan. Their relationship comes across so many obstacles because of the situation Logan's in, but I was continuously rooting for them throughout this book to be together and be at peace with each other. They really deserve that. So the interesting thing about this book is the first half of the book we follow Logan and Alyssa's initial meeting and their falling in love with each other, and then in the second half is when a few years have passed and it follows more of their second chance romance, which the trope of second chance romance I don't love, because I much prefer watching 2 characters fall in love rather than watching them rekindle a past love that they have with each other. But I still like this book because we do get to see them as they are falling in love when they are younger. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to reading the rest of the books in this series. If you don't know, each book in this series is a standalone, so they can't all be read as standalone since they're individual standalone stories. So I'm really interested to see what the last 2 books in the series are going to be about, which I hope to get to really soon. I'm going to talk about the series that I started this month, and I read 3 books from this series all in 1 month, which is an accomplishment for me because usually I put follow-up books in a series off for a long time, but I kind of binge read this one, and that is the Bargainer series. So the first book, Rhapsodic, was my random TBR pick for the month of January, so this is a book I had to read this month. And out of all of the random TBR picks I've been doing for these past few months, this one has been the most most successful because I really enjoyed this book. So much so that I right away wanted to start the rest of the books in this series. So going into what this book is about, in case you don't know, it takes place in a world where supernatural creatures exist, both in a fantastical world, which the fantastical world is known as the other world, and the real world, which is basically Earth. So this is considered an urban fantasy. So the main character it follows is, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I could never really pinpoint how to pronounce her name. I think it's Calypso. Her nickname is Callie though, which is a lot easier to pronounce. And she is one of these supernatural creatures in this world, which is a siren who has recently killed her abusive stepfather. So she calls on the bargainer, who is also known as his real name Desmond Flynn, and he's a fairy known for striking deals, and she calls on him so that he can help her out of the mess that she's in with having just killed her stepfather. And over time she continues to make deals with him just so he could remain in her company because she really likes being around him. And after spending time with him for a while, she does end up developing feelings for him. But right after she confesses her feelings to him, he inexplicably disappears for 7 years out of nowhere. And so she's left heartbroken. They're separated for so long, she has no idea why he left her. Until 7 years later, he reappears to her again. And Callie's feelings for Des arise again as they set out to the other world in order to find this fae who has been kidnapping Desmond's soldiers. Which I also forgot to mention that Desmond is the king of the Night Kingdom in the other world. So the other world has 4 kingdoms, I think. It's the Night Kingdom, the Day Kingdom, the Fauna Kingdom, and the Flora Kingdom. Kind of like how the 𝑎𝑘𝑒 series is with all of the courts in that world, which I will say, this is the first thing I wanted to mention about this series. If you are looking for a series that is a lot like A Court of Thorns and Roses, and you love that series, you need to read this series because the Bargainer series is so eerily similar to A Court of Thorns and Roses due to the fact that the hero is the king of the Night Kingdom, much like Rhysand is the lord of the Night Court. There's a lot of fae in it. The other world is just really similar to Prythian in A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I would really recommend read this series if you liked A Court of Thorns and Roses. I have heard a lot of readers who have read the Bargainer series compare it to A Court of Thorns and Roses as well. They are so similar. They're similar in another way that I can't mention without spoiling this series and the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, but you'll know if you've read it. It's just kind of funny how much alike they are, and it makes me wonder if this series took inspiration off of 𝑎𝑘𝑒. I have very high suspicions. But anyway, going over my other thoughts about this book. So I really did love the romance in it. The romance in it is so pure, and I love the language used between Callie and Desmond as they express their feelings for each other. It comes across as very sappy, but in the cutest way. They just have such strong romantic feelings for each other that are so beautiful in the way they express it, and the way they show their love to each other is also so beautiful. Though I did love the romance, I did find that the romance really overtook the plot a lot. I feel like the romance and the actual plot of the book didn't really balance each other out that well, because I was finding while we were discovering the actual plot of the book and getting into all the mystery, we would get to the actual plot, and then a few pages later we'd focus on the romance way more than we should have, because I feel like what was most important was the plot at that moment, but then it would focus on the romance. The romance really took over more of the story than the plot did, and I just kind of wish we got more insight into what the actual plot was over the romance, even though I did still love the romance. And the first book does an interesting thing where it flashes back at the beginning of each chapter to 7 years ago when Callie and Desmond were first getting to know each other, and we get to see their kind of romance start. And then in the same chapter we go to present day where 7 years have passed and they're kind of trying to rekindle their relationship. But unfortunately I felt like the flashbacks and the present day scenes didn't really flow together as well. I wish instead we could have just gotten one book with just seeing them 7 years ago, and then in the next book, follow them in present day. However, this all goes away in the second book, and for that reason, I do think I like the second book a little better because it flowed a little nicer. So I did end up reading the first book, which is Rhapsodic, and then the second book, which is A Strange Hymn. I also read the novella, which is The Emperor of Evening Stars, which the novella specifically follows Desmond's point of view. This whole series has been following Callie's point of view, but in the novella, we follow Desmond, and it was pretty interesting because we get to know his past, which is brought up a lot, and we get to know more about his relationship with his mother, who had died, and his father, who is pretty terrible, so we get more insight into him, while also getting scenes that have been already introduced throughout the series, but in Desmond's point of view and what he was thinking throughout them. I felt like the novella was interesting, but it didn't really bring anything new to the series, since we already get glimpses of Desmond's past throughout these books as he tells Callie about his past, so I didn't feel like the extra scenes about his past really added to anything. It was kind of intriguing knowing what Desmond was thinking throughout scenes that we've already seen in the past books, but overall I could have gone without reading this novella and it wouldn't have changed anything if I hadn't read it. So it was just fine. I gave Rhapsodic 4 stars, A Strange Hymn 4 stars, and then I gave The Emperor of Evening Stars 3 stars. So on average, this series is shaping up to be a 4-star series. I am currently reading the last book, which is Dark Harmony, and it is going really good so far. So far, it's been the best book out of the entire series, so I have really high hopes for it, and I'll let you know what I think of the last book in my February wrap-up because I am still reading it, so hopefully the finale will be great. And Rhapsodic was my first read of 2022, and I mean, I really enjoyed the book, so I'm really glad that my first read of the year was a positive one. That is pretty awesome. Now going into the 2 other books I read this month. So next, I read Verity by Colleen Hoover. Oh my god, I've been really excited to talk about this one. This one was insane. So Verity is about a writer named Lowen, and she is offered to finish a book series by famous author Verity Crawford. Since Verity has sustained brain injuries after a car crash, which makes it impossible for her to write. So while going through Verity's files, which contains outlines for her book series, Lowen comes across a manuscript for Verity's autobiography that contains very disturbing details on Verity's thoughts about her husband and her children, and the plot goes from there, and it is insanity. So Colleen Hoover primarily writes romance, contemporary romances, which all of her stories are really deep, have very deep themes in them. That's what she's known for. But before this, I don't think she's ever written a thriller, and I've never read a thriller from her, but Verity is categorized as a thriller book. And oh my god, can she write a thriller, because this was done so amazing. Not that I've read a lot of thriller books, but just based on my experience with this book, I thought it was done so well. And when you're reading a thriller, you want it to be scary. You want it to be very unnerving, and Verity did just that. This book was so chilling. Verity as a character terrifying me. Her thinking process is so psychotic and disturbing, and it kind of blows my mind that people actually think this way, because there have been cases in real life where there are people who have this train of thought that is so disturbing. I won't go into what exactly she's all about because you just gotta find out yourself when you read it, but I will tell you, she will disturb you. Her thinking is very problematic, very terrifying. She absolutely terrified me. She's also a character that is very easy to hate, and you will find out while you're reading through her manuscript, because we do get chapters of just her manuscript, which is really cool, but those are the most scariest chapters for sure. The actual twist that happens in this book had me gasping. Colleen Hoover always writes really good plot twists, and the one in this threw me for a loop. Actually, while I was reading this towards the end, I was like, isn't there supposed to be a plot twist? Because this is Colleen Hoover. And something came up that I thought was the plot twist, but I was like, I already saw that coming, so really, is that the plot twist? That doesn't make sense. But then a few chapters later, the actual plot twist drops, and I did not see it coming whatsoever. Like, this plot twist was so unpredictable to me, and it blew my mind. It was absolutely crazy. It had me questioning so many things. It had me questioning everything I read throughout this whole book, for a reason, it's just insanity, and it was done so well. There is a romance in this book, but I will say the romance takes a backseat to the thriller aspect of this book, but there is a little bit of a romance, and it does involve cheating, which I absolutely hate cheating, usually. But I feel like the cheating in this book I didn't mind so much because the romance involves Verity's husband, who is Jeremy. He starts to have a thing for 𝑙𝑜𝑒𝑛, and they kind of start something up, so it involves Verity's husband cheating on her. But it's so easy to hate Verity that I didn't feel bad for her that her husband was cheating on her, which may sound awful, but that made it kind of easier for me to really feel for 𝑙𝑜𝑒𝑛 and Jeremy, because I thought their relationship was much healthier than the relationship that he had with Verity. So the cheating aspect of this book didn't bother me too much because of that, and I really did like the connection that these two had. But like I said, the romance does take a back seat to the thriller aspect of this book, which the thriller part of this book is the main reason why I read it in the first place. Yeah, this one's crazy. If you haven't read it yet, definitely do. If you love thrillers, this is a good one. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Next, this one I've been really excited to talk about. So for years, I would not pick this book up because of the controversy around it and how many bad reviews it got. But out of the blue, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to read that. Because why not? It's 50 Shades of Grey. Oh my god. Like I said, I went years without reading this because I always thought I'm never going to read this. Ever. Because based on what I have been hearing about it, it just never seemed like something I would like because of the content matter of it. And mainly because I heard that the male love interest was very, very controlling, and I do not like male love interest with controlling attitudes towards the female. I never loved that, so that really put me off from reading this for a long time. But I decided to pick this up because this book is so highly popular worldwide, and for a book of this genre, I feel like that's so rare for a book like this to get that much high recognition throughout the entire world. That just does not happen. So because this book I felt like was so revolutionary, I'm like, I just have to read it. I'm just too curious about it, and so that I did, and I am so shocked because I actually enjoyed this. Like, what the heck? How did I enjoy this? It still blows my mind. So going into what it's about, I feel like everyone knows what this is about, or at least you should have a little bit of an idea what it's about. So I don't know if it's much use to give a summary, but I will anyway, just in case, of course. So this one follows Anastasia, who is a literature student, and she ends up filling in for her sick friend by conducting her interview in her place, and she ends up conducting an interview with a billionaire businessman who is Christian Grey. And Christian takes an immediate interest in Anna, and Anna in turn really starts to fall in love with him rather quickly. However, Anna soon discovers that Christian has a secret that includes him being a dominant, and he is in search of a submissive, and he really wants Anastasia to fill in that role, but Anastasia is really hesitant because of the nature of this lifestyle, but at the same time she's still falling for him, so she kind of wants to give it a chance. So as you may know, I'm sure everyone knows, this book is very heavy on the BDSM. The major focus of this book is that kind of thing, which is something I'm really not used to. I really do not like the idea of BDSM whatsoever. It makes me very uncomfortable. Like, anyone who wants to do that, that's fine. I will not judge, but me personally, I don't like reading about it. I don't like knowing what it entails. It makes my skin crawl. Those scenes in this book kind of made me a little uncomfortable. But the main reason I enjoyed this book so much is because I felt like Christian was such an intriguing character. He was so fascinating to me. I really loved getting to know the psychology of him and why he ended up being a dominant, why he feels the need to cause pain to others and able to feel pleasure. I continuously wanted to know why that was, and I feel like this book doesn't give us the complete picture on why he is the way he is, but I'm pretty sure the rest of the books in the series will show us more on why he is the way he is. I'm pretty certain that's going to happen, and I really can't wait to find out more about him. He is what's keeping me reading this series. Although his entire character is very controversial because it's terrible to feel like you have to hurt someone in order to feel pleasure from that. I don't like that idea, and I don't think that is very healthy at all, but I do want to know why he feels the need to be controlling and why he feels the need to hurt others like this, why he feels the need to be so sadistic. I just want to know why. It's so fascinating to me. And the little instances we see of why he might be like this are very, very, very disturbing. He has had a very, very hard upbringing and was faced with things that no one should have to go through that are very, very, very sad. So I do feel for him in that way, and I can understand why he's so sadistic because of what he's experienced. So I really loved Christian. I don't love what he does. I don't love what he stands for, but I loved how well written his character was. Anastasia was also pretty nice. In comparison with Christian, I didn't find her as interesting, but in some ways she is really likable. I love that she has a lot of hopeless romanticism about things. I really relate to her on that. She is very, very naive, which is a definite character flaw. She's very naive when it comes to Christian and how unhealthy of a relationship she does have with him. So I'm wondering if she's going to grow from that throughout this series and really realize that, hey, he needs some serious help, and she in turn should not really start anything with him until he improves himself, because that could really, really hurt her in the long run. But the thing that stopped me from giving it a 5-star is the writing. The writing is not great. It definitely needed another edit. There is a lot of telling and not showing in this one, and the sentence structures specifically I felt like were really, really weird. I can't remember what the sentence said, but I came across this sentence that used very and really in the same sentence, which made no sense because you should never use very and really in the same sentence since they mean the same things. The sentence felt really wonky because of that. There were a lot of instances of sentences like that just really weren't well put together. And in case you didn't know, this book is based off of a Twilight fanfiction, which is a little crazy. It's hard to kind of imagine this book based off of Twilight. I feel like the two books are just so different that it's really, really weird. And in that case, the book did read a little bit like a fan fiction sometimes. You can definitely tell it's based off of a fan fiction. I am actually going to finish this series. I want to read the other books because my interest is piqued when it comes to this series, and I am looking forward to discovering more about Christian and why he is the way he is, and we'll see what happens from there. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, which blows my mind. I expected to give this a 2-star at least. And that is it for all the books that I read in January. Let me know the books that you read throughout this month. I would really love to know. And if you've read any of these books that I mentioned, please let me know your feelings on them because I would really like to know. And let's hope that February will also be a good reading month. And hopefully I'll read more than 5 books. It is the shortest month of the year, so we'll see about that. But I'm sure it'll be a good reading month. I have a pretty good lineup of books planned, so I have high hopes. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more anime-related videos and book-related videos. And if you would like to follow me on social media, those links will be in the description box. I upload every Tuesday and Saturday, and I'll be back really soon. Bye!